D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. But you see, as great as Dungeons and Dragons is, D&D has a dark side of it, just lurking in the shadows, waiting to be revealed. Yeah, I'm talking creepy dungeon masters, power gaming players, and massive drama. Hello everyone, I'm Finn, welcome back to Finn Films. You guys already know what time it is, D&D Horror Story time. Today I have handpicked a high-quality selection of D&D horror stories from you all, from a classic Matt Mercer effect horror story to the world's Brattiest Player, and a tiny little helping of toxic players to go nicely on the side. As always with this video series, these stories generally come from Reddit. This week's story is coming from the D&D Horror Stories subreddit. If you'd like to have your D&D horror story featured in one of these videos, then hit me up in my email down below. Our first story today comes from a redacted Reddit user, rest in peace my friend, and is a story of one of the most toxic D&D player experiences I've ever seen in my life. The Reddit post titled, Paid Player versus Free Players. I've been in a game for about a month now, and last night's game was the final straw for me. I have a DM who really just likes hurting the party. We are playing Dungeon of the Mad Mage. No one makes a rogue. I joined the party while playing Kaladin. The guy playing the only trap finder gets bored and rerolls a wizard. Nice. Group insists that I have to now go first because no one can find traps. I try, but every single trap we find we can't disarm, and every trap we do manage to disarm still hurts us. I was playing tank, so I had a respectable 23 AC. DM figures out I have 23 AC. Suddenly, whole combat goes by without me ever getting attacked. Fight a swarm of bats, 14 attacks go towards the wizard, and the bard, a single attack out of 24 is aimed at me. I decapitated a vampire. DM rules, since I have its head and it has regeneration, that it revives from 0 HP and bites me anyway. Its severed head bites me. Giant hallway full of snakes, tells us walking through it would mean us getting bitten. DM states too many snakes for us to attack them. Can't use my weapon. Snakes aren't afraid of fire, so can't use my torch. No one has AoE spells. Shrug and walk through the snakes anyway. DM tells us we're all dumb and we should have just used disengage. DM then rules an NPC robs me of all my gold, no check required while I'm in a tavern. Then we reach the final straw. The wizard player arcane locks me in a room with this sealed demon who plans on killing me if he gets free. I state that this isn't funny, that this could kill my player, and if PvP is allowed, I'm going to wreck said wizard if he doesn't quit it, since this could actually kill my player. The DM doesn't stop him. Party doesn't want to get involved, so they don't stop him either. I say fine, you want it that way? Then that's how it's gonna be. If I live through this, I'm killing your wizard character, as I can only assume that this is a hostile action against my character, and I can only assume that PvP is a go, since a player is taking a hostile action against another player. The party gets out and lets me free. They insist that I just drop it and let's get on with it. They tell me to lead on since, traps. I refuse to tank the traps for a group that just locked me out to die. I tell the wizard he needs to apologize or we're going to have some problems. He tells me straight up to go fuck myself. I say okay, I'm attacking him. The DM chimes in and won't let me attack him because apparently no PvP is allowed. The DM tells me that this player is a paying player and he's asked the DM to kill me off. Him and another player pay to play in this game and they threaten to quit if the DM doesn't kick me or at least kill my player off. The DM tells me if I don't stop causing problems, he's going to kill my character. I point out that the wizard started this and refused to apologize, and that it very well could have ended with my character dying. And if there is no PvP in this game, he should have stopped all of this before it even started. The DM says that it's not really PvP to arcane lock someone out of a rest in a Dungeons and Dragons game, and he can't have me fighting with paid players since I play for free. At this point, no one knows that I play for free in this game except the DM. I quit on the spot. The DM tried to get me to join a different game he was running as an apology, but I refused flat out. Never in all of my years of Dungeons & Dragons have I seen a player petition the DM to kill off someone else's player character because of a fight that they started. I've never had a DM allow a player's PC to bully other PCs because they pay him money. worst D&D experience of my entire D&D career. Wowzers, my dude, and this is why we don't pay for Dungeons & Dragons game. I'm only half joking. I'm sure there's plenty of games out there where people have paid dungeon masters to run games for them, and it's gone perfectly fine. If anything, one might think that if I were to pay a dungeon master to run a game for me, then this game should go extremely well, because the dungeon master is getting paid to run said game. However, in a situation like this where some of the players are playing for free, while other of the players are paying said dungeon master, this is instantly some red f***ing flags. Now, I've played in plenty of games with a little bit of like inter-drama within the party, most of it being in character, but sometimes you just can never tell. I've played plenty of games where characters just don't get along with one another. Most of the time, this is in roleplay. Sometimes someone wants to play a character that just doesn't really fit in that well with the party. Sometimes someone plays a character that just genuinely gets on your nerves in the, in the choices that they make in character. This story, though, this takes this to a whole nother level.
That's taking it to the whole nother level.
I've never been in any game where a player is allowed to bully another player regardless if they are paying the dungeon master or not. This is just generally a no-go in any D&D game. Personally, if I was this player, I probably would have quit mid-session, having to deal with all of this bullshit from this, frankly, group of children that you are playing with. At the end of the day, Dungeons & Dragons is supposed to be a collaborative storytelling game, but most importantly, it's supposed to be fun. If you aren't having fun in your D&D game, then why are you even playing? Our next story comes from Reddit user Lord_Brattiest. The post titled, "Player sent this when something he didn't like happened in my game. I have watched hundreds of hours of Matt Mercer DMing and his players playing Dungeons & Dragons. I probably know about the game more than you do." Uh-oh, we got ourselves a classic Matt Mercer effect. Now, if any of you have watched my channel long enough, you know that I am a massive fan of Critical Role. I've been watching Critical Role basically since day one pretty loyally. I absolutely love these guys. I love the story that they are telling, but let me be 100% honest here. The Matt Mercer effect is f***ing real. In short, if somehow you don't know what the Matt Mercer effect is, basically it's the effect that Matt Mercer has had on the Dungeons & Dragons community as a whole. You see, with the rise of 5e mainlining, kind of mainstreaming D&D, making it a lot simpler, a lot easier to grasp for a wider variety of people, and the blow up of Critical Role as a Dungeons & Dragons show, a lot of people's first exposure to Dungeons & Dragons comes through Critical Role, and they think that this is how all Dungeons & Dragons games should be played. Now, while the Critical Role cast in the Critical Role game is amazing, they have some absolutely amazing actors, and the story they tell is fantastic, we have to remember that these people are professionals. Matt Mercer has been DMing for like the majority of his life, and he is a master storyteller, and the players at his table are master actors, improv actors, and literally professional voice actors. Acting is what these motherfuckers do for a living. Your game should not be like Critical Role. In fact, I would say it's almost impossible for your game to be like Critical Role because, again, they are professional fucking actors. Unfortunately, though, this doesn't stop a bunch of plebeians out there who are absolutely massive Critical Role fans for comparing every single Dungeons & Dragons game that they personally play in to Critical Role, something that I guarantee your DM fucking hates. Again, I love Critical Role as much as the next guy. If anything, more than the next guy, but comparing your Dungeons & Dragons game and your experience at your table with the Critical Role table is one of the worst things that you could possibly do. There's so many people who've made videos about the Matt Mercer effect. It's a very well documented effect, and unfortunately this is just the consequences that come with just how massive Dungeons & Dragons has become, alongside how massive Critical Role has become. Critical Role in its own way being a kind of reason why Dungeons & Dragons has blown up as much as it has. Unfortunately, though, the downside of this is that it has spawned a bunch of know-it-alls who have sunk hundreds of hours into watching Critical Role and think that every single Dungeons & Dragons game has to be played like how Matt Mercer plays it. I'm sorry to tell you guys, but this is just not the case. Some games are more roleplay heavy, some games are more dice combat heavy, all games are different, every dungeon master is different, and at the end of the day, we're all just normal people out here trying to have some fun. Our final story is an absolute doozy and has a classic case of a super toxic player that really just tickled me silly. The story coming from Reddit user Really Enjoy Scarabs. The post titled, "Absolute Brat Rage Quits D&D because we decided to keep playing." We are playing Waterdeep, but shit's gone off the rails, so the GM had to get a bit creative. The cast is as follows: Friendly GM, Halfling Paladin of the Laughing God, Tiefling Warlock that is questionably evil, Shifter Glamour Bard that is generally a good time, Changeling Monk with multiple personalities based on their chosen form. This is the Brat player. We were down 2 players, so I won't mention those characters, but normally the party is a bit bigger. Oh yeah, spoilers for the Waterdeep campaign ahead. So we just fought the Poverty Beholder, and nobody was looking too great. The Brat got caught in the Pally's Moonbeam, so they were forced into their OG form. They proceeded to freak out and cower in the corner, trying to hide from everyone, while generally being low HP. This is in character and is understandable. Pally tries to give them a quick high five to heal them up, since we're in what is essentially a dungeon at this point. They run and continue to cower, eventually causing the Paladin to tackle them to try to heal them with lay on hands. Probably not ideal, sure, but at least the guy wasn't in the danger zone anymore. The Brat proceeds to get absolutely hysterical, and compare this to assault and a what? Excuse me? Granted, they were probably just being a bit hyperbolic, but saying a character who mentally acts like a child or grant them over a high five heal is a bit much in my book. The next session rolls around and we start off in the same spot. The Brat continues to cower behind things and generally refuses to interact with the party. Given that there's only so much that one can engage with a character that is actively avoiding the party, we continued to play the game and attempted to open some chests. We figured after some bad rolls we would need the knock spell to get the chests open, so the greedy Pally and the gang go about talking to NPCs in the tower and learn that some of the apprentices know the knock spell. So we make our way deeper into the tower, get attacked by some animated staves, convince some NPCs to fight the staves as we slip off to continue our search for the casters. The Brat continues to sulk now alone in the treasure room with the dead Poverty Beholder. Well, alright dude, you do you, I guess was the general consensus. We find a gargoyle and have a really fun conversation with them, convincing them to come join the party since we're basically down 3 members at this point, with the Brat sulking and refusing to do much of anything. The gargoyle is well received and proves to be extremely useful in the next combat. Meanwhile, the GM is trying to bait the Brat out by giving them info or little mentions of NPC activity. They snub 1 or 2 from what I remember, but eventually finally stealth after some NPCs and find the party. We're in the middle of combat by now, and it's really not going so great, but thankfully our gargoyle friend is kicking ass. We're thrilled with them and shower praise upon it. Apparently, this was a mistake, as it enrages the Brat player, and he begins to make comments about us replacing him. We hadn't, we just, found an NPC, but whatever. So he sits and pouts in the corner and watches us burning up cell spots and taking damage from this massive demon thing we are fighting. We finally managed to down it, but we're not looking so hot. The gargoyle nearly went down, so we heal him, but things aren't going great. Now, we've had nothing more than a short rest at this point, and we're pretty much all out of heals. The Brat is still lurking in the shadows, and our passive perception isn't enough to notice him. He follows until we enter another combat, getting our asses kicked, and then he decides it's time for him to shine. While our Pally is locked in a fight for his life and currently losing, the Brat suddenly pops up from nowhere, landing a series of blows on the gargoyle NPC, downing it in basically 1 turn. As soon as he did, we all yelled out in protest and cautioned him that what he was doing would be met with retaliation, but he claimed that he was salty and that we'd replaced him, so he was going to kill the gargoyle. The Brat then teleported behind the bard, attacking them and then retconning the attack, ending their hellish turn. Nothing like a little classic retcon of a PvP, eh? The bard pops their mantle of inspiration so we can all flee and cower behind the gargoyle while the wargok spares the dying on them. We're all visibly angry and the party decides that they're going to attack and likely kill the Brat. The Brat meanwhile downs the animated armor while trying to save the gargoyle and then promptly sits in the middle of the room. They drop their form, replacing it with a more stupid personality in the hopes of us overlooking their transgressions. The Brat continues to repeat that their character was just salty and that they had been replaced as their only excuse, and then later suggest that their character was too stupid, so it was technically in character. Right. The Warlock throws an Eldritch Blast while the Brat is prone in the middle of the room. I threaten him with my longsword, but eventually decide to just tie the clown up because man, I'm not gonna kill the dude just for being an asshole. We've all been playing for nearly a year together and the campaign is just about over. So I tie him up, winning the grapple roll, and then he starts shouting, I gag his character. Which was rude, I admit, but I was pretty angry myself. I'll just mention this here that the brat and I don't get along, so the fact that it was my character tying him up didn't go very well. Sure, I mean the other two characters were in agreement that we should kill him, but fuck me, right? So he goes on to say that he doesn't need to put up with this bullshit and enough people don't care about him in real life, so fuck you guys. Or something to that extent, and then he proceeds to rage quit, much to our surprise. Our GM runs the game every other week, so he's decided that he's dismantling this campaign now, and essentially we've got one more game of Waterdeep, then rip D&D with this group. The kicker is that apparently he's fucking livid with me. Just me. So I can't wait for our final session. I'm half tempted to not even fucking go because it's just not fun anymore. If this were a new player, I'd be more understanding, but the man is in his mid-20s and has been playing for ages. We're likely not going to get an apology, and I wouldn't be surprised if one was demanded from us from not dropping everything and trying to force his character to interact with us despite the previous comment. I'm all for RPing and for character development, but there's only so much one can do to engage with someone who refuses to engage back, yet expects it? I'm still baffled by all of this, and I'm now even considering if somehow I was the problem, even though everyone else in the group was clearly pissed off and out for blood. I just hope I don't have a follow-up to post after this. Ugh, and rant. And that, my friends, is a classic story of a toxic, selfish player. There are plenty of these people out there in the Dungeons & Dragons tabletop roleplay community world. If you've played Dungeons & Dragons long enough, it's likely that you've experienced a player like this, a player who just can't get enough of the spotlight, a player who very much wants the game to revolve around them. Unfortunately, these people are... well, there's a lot of them. Unfortunately, Dungeons & Dragons does seem to attract this time of people at times, players who think that the game needs to be played their way or the highway, and that they should be the center of all of the attention. Again, I don't know how many times I've said this, but Dungeons & Dragons is a cooperative storytelling game. It is a game about cooperation between a group of people and your dungeon master to tell a grand narrative together. There's times when I'm going to be in the spotlight and my character, there's times when I need to step aside and let other people into the spotlight. The game is all about give and take. Roleplay, in essence, it's all about giving and taking. One person gets the W, while the other person gets the L. But everyone at the end of the day has fun. That is the point of it. At least, that's supposed to be the point of it. Unfortunately, though, a lot of people can't seem to take L's in roleplay. Look no farther than the Grand Theft Auto roleplay community to see this in action. I've seen plenty of players like this firsthand. Fortunately, though, not to this degree. Sometimes there's just players out there who think that their character's story matters more than the rest of the player base, I guess. Well, at least I'm assuming that's their reasoning, but it's really hard to tell with players like this. Again, if you're ever having problems with a player, if you think that a player's character's behavior or just a player's behavior in general is problematic in some way, you gotta say something about it or else the problem will never get solved. Either that or just cut your losses and leave the party and find a new group. I mean, according to this OP, the game had been going on for about a year, which is pretty impressive that they've dealt with this guy's bullshit for that long. I find a lot of times with Dungeons & Dragons campaigns that there is a very much a sunk cost fallacy, this idea that I've spent so much time in this game, so I have to deal with the issues, even if some of the issues bother me. I spent so much time playing this campaign with these people, I can't possibly leave. This is straight up sunk cost fallacy at its finest. Look, at the end of the day, how many times have I said this? If the game is not fun, then you should leave. Dungeons & Dragons is about fun. It's about fun with a group of people. If you aren't having fun, you have to say something, things have to change, or you should just leave and find a game that is more suited to you, or a game, that is actually fun. It's like a person who plays competitive video games but constantly rages. The point of the video game is to have fun. If you are constantly raging, it doesn't really seem like you were having fun, are you? So why are you playing? And yes, this was another edition of Dungeons & Dragons Horror Stories. If you guys did enjoy this video, then please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to help support me and to put these videos into the algorithm. If you did enjoy this video, then why don't you check out some of our other D&D content and D&D horror stories on screen now. As always, guys, thank you so much for continuing to support me. I hope to see you in the next one. Drink your water, hug your mother. Until next time, peace, love, adu.